I got this big hunk of rose quartz. Hey guys, how is it going? Happy Thanksgiving Monday from here in Canada if you are watching from elsewhere, and happy Thanksgiving to all of my Canadian friends. Today I want to, with the theme of Thanksgiving, I want to share something that I'm very grateful for, and it's something that I don't talk about very often because it's a little weird to some people, but I want to talk about my gratitude for some of the experiences I've had in my life that have solidified my belief in unseen things in this world. So this is kind of my breaking into talking about some new things on my channel. Up until this point, the majority of my videos have been me talking about my diet, what I ate, health challenges, yada yada yada. I want to start coming from a different place, and I want to show a wider spectrum of who Kayla is. And this is one of the many facets of who I am. So the video itself, this video, the idea came about to me about a week ago. I went to a gem and crystal show with my mom and sister, and it's a warehouse show. We found out about it a year ago, so this is the second time around, and so they've got there's jewelry sellers, there's people with raw minerals and crystals and gems and all sorts of stuff. But the reason that we go is that we're totally into and in love with crystals for energetic and spiritual reasons. I will talk about my experience that I had a week ago in a little bit, but I'm going to start from the beginning. At quite a young age, I became fascinated with the unseen, with energy and that stuff. The very first introduction I had to it that I can remember is when I was at a Chapters at a bookstore here in Canada, and there was a woman doing a talk. She had these cards that had all these different graphic images on it, and she had a book, and it was a set that went together. And the idea was that every day you picked whatever image was the most appealing to you, and then you do a little bit of journaling. And there was also a reason for each one. And each day you would have something that's slightly different attracted. It's not like it was always one that was your favorite. You kind of changed. But that was beside the thing. The woman we talked to afterwards, we got her to sign our books. And we were talking about energy. My mom and I forget who else was with us. She started talking about energy, and she mentioned a book called The Celestine Prophecy. Many of you may have read it or heard about it. It's been around for a long time. It's a fictional story, adventure novel that talks about energy and intention and all of this new age stuff. So I read this book and I became absolutely fascinated with the idea of energy. The idea that with your hands there's actually a magnetic, electric force. And when you bring your hands close together but not touching, you can start to feel that radiation, that magnetic tension. And the more in tuned you become to it, the more powerful and tangible it becomes. So this was probably, I was maybe 15 years old, and I had a boyfriend at the time that I would get him to close his eyes and put his hands up. He could feel like which hand I was near, some stuff like that. So it just was really fascinating to me. It dropped off for a while. It is something that you need to maintain. So back in, let's see now, timeline. It would be 2009, maybe 2010. It was around that time that I was doing energy exchange at a yoga studio. So I was practicing a lot of yoga, I was really into raw foods at the time. I was also working at a raw food restaurant in addition to doing the energy exchange. And so at this time I was on raw foods for about 3 weeks, and I went to a class. This was a hot yoga studio, so it was a hot class, and I love this studio. One of the reasons I love this studio is that after the yoga practice, they left you with Shavasana and let you stay. If you don't know yoga, Shavasana, you lay down flat on your back on your yoga mat at the end of class and just let yourself be still and feeling. Sometimes you feel, sometimes you just meditate, sometimes you just clear your mind. At the end of class, they let you have time. They usually had a half hour or 45-minute gap between classes, so there was time for you to go inward. If you just felt calm and you just wanted to relax there and take a few minutes before getting back to your life, they gave you space to do that. So in this particular class, it had been a couple weeks that I had been on raw food. I was eating a super clean diet. I was feeling good. I also had developed a friendship with the teacher that day. And during my Shavasana, usually I would count to 100. I would take an inhale, I'd say 1, you know, in my head, and then I'd exhale, and I'd inhale, say 2. And so I would try to, that would be my way of focusing my mind, and I still use that technique to this day because my mind just, things are constantly coming and going. So I was working through this. And after a while, I'm sorry, I'm getting over something with my throat. After a while, I learned that when I got to around 50, where I could actually be, you know, focused on those numbers, be aware of every passing number, when I hit the number 50, I would get these really soothing tingles in my body, almost like my whole body was starting to vibrate. And it was a really neat sensation. And once that hit, I'm like, I don't need to count anymore. I'm just gonna savor this jam. This is awesome. On this particular day, I can't remember what number I counted to, I started to have this feeling in my body as though there was this expansion happening. I felt like in the space between my belly button and the bottom of my hips, that it was just like pulling apart in the most wonderful way ever. It's not like I was being torn apart. It felt like my body all of a sudden became like 1,000,000 feet long, but it was only to the base of my rib cage, around my belly button. It was just the lower half of my body kind of went into this kind of infinite, and then it stopped at this area. And when reflecting on this with the teacher of that class that day, I started really paying attention to the idea of chakras. She got me to come outside and try to make noise, to yell and scream, to try to get that vibration going. What I understand as my very first experience with Kundalini, which is an idea that there is an energetic serpent resting in the base of the spine, and through meditation you're able to activate this energy. It's the only time in my life that I have ever experienced this, and I think now that I've experienced it, there's often this expectation for it to happen again. But it was a wild, wild experience. It was literally like I was just infinite. My legs were just shooting off into the universe. It was the craziest thing. So after this Kundalini experience, I realized, and this is, I mean, I'm tying nutrition in without even meaning to, but after this Kundalini energetic experience, I realized the power of eating a really clean diet and what that had on the health of my cells, at least in my experience with my body. I experienced this. I knew there was energy. I started learning about chakras. I became aware that there's a lot of emotional blockages above the belly button in the chakra system. If you want me to talk about more about chakras in another video, please let me know, but I'm not going to get into it here. So I've had a few interesting experiences. A couple of years after the Kundalini experience, I'm just calling it that because it's the closest thing that I've had happen to me. I also, maybe in 2011, 2012, 2013, I don't know, somewhere in there, I went to visit a woman that does Reiki and channeling. And I had Reiki before, but I never really felt much. I don't know, it was calm, it was fine. But you have to find someone good if you're going for Reiki. You have to find someone that you groove with. Not everyone connects with everyone's, just like relationships and friendships and all that. You have to find the right connection for you. But in this session, she put a large crystal, I think it was a selenite, on my stomach. And at some point early in the session, she moved this crystal up to in my kind of rib cage area. So she moved it up a few inches. And throughout the entire maybe 45 minutes to an hour I was laying there on the table, I felt that single piece in 2 spots. I don't know how to explain it. It felt like it was there and it was there, but it was only one thing that was on me. And that was pretty wild. You can't, when you actually physically feel something, you can't dispute it, that there's something there. So that happened to me. Yeah, I've had some pretty wild experiences. So a lot of things have been feeling up until recently. And this past Sunday, we were at the crystal show and I got some really fun crystals. I got this big hunk of rose quartz for $5. I've always wanted this big stone, so I've got this rose quartz. I'm super in love with it. But what I found that just totally, I think it set something off in me. I'm probably losing a bunch of subscribers right now because I'm just, anyway. What really set me off, and I have this like crazy feeling in my head. It's no longer a strange thing to me. I've had feelings with crystals before, but I get such an intense feeling. So I found, and I'd never seen it before, I'd never been aware of it until the morning before that show when I was looking in one of my books for, what should I look for today. This is a Brandenburg amethyst, or Brandenburg quartz. And I think you can see it there. It's probably focusing. If I do this, you can see that it's kind of purple. And this is, so it's pretty thick. It only comes from one area in the world, but when I have this near me, I have this like feeling in the third eye area. It's just so intense. So this was something I had to take with me. It came home with me. I have a few other things if you're interested in seeing, I can show you later, but I believe that this quartz is the reason for the next thing I'm going to tell you why, or that happened. I'm pretty sure something opened up. So there was an announcement. We were at this show looking at stuff and someone announced there was a talk on crystals and chakras. And we're like, hey, it's like 2 hours till the show closes. Let's go have a seat, check it out. And in there was a woman, a Reiki master, another one. And it ended up being, she introduced the talk, she gave everyone a stone, started talking about the chakras, and it ended up being a session that was just run pretty much question and answer. I've run talks before where I kind of run it in a question and answer style as well, because then people get exactly what they want and need out of it. So as this woman started talking, this is so wild to me. As this woman started talking, she had a lot of just like white wall behind her. So it was very, very simple background. I started seeing this very faint cloud-like substance around this woman. Mostly around her head, almost like this like really faint jello blob. And as she was talking, I realized after a little while it wasn't an optical illusion and I was actually seeing something, so I was allowing my eyes to blur. And as she was thinking, I could see when she was trying to access information in her brain, and when she was communicating with someone, she would turn her head and you could actually see that she was sending her aura towards someone to communicate and connect. And I've never seen anything like this before. I have heard people talk about it. I've heard that you can do it. I've read about it. I was not putting any effort into this whatsoever, and all of a sudden I started seeing this energy body outside the physical body, and it was mostly around her head with a very, very faint fuzz around the rest of the body. The moment that I finally stopped doubting myself in this experience, I only remember half of what she said because I was just so amazed by seeing this that when there was a woman who asked her a question about a loved one that had passed on, and there was a little bit of an emotional moment, and when she was communicating with her, I could see that she actually was giving her aura to this woman to create comfort. It was like this cloudy blob connected to this other woman to give her comfort, and you could see she was looking her directly in the eye, and all of a sudden, like, they became enmeshed, and it almost created this boundary or something. It's so hard to describe these things in language, but this experience happened to me. And now that this has happened, it's not going. I also have learned in the last week, in observing when I can, that many people have an aura that is very close to the physical body. It's mostly, yeah, I'd be really interested to sit in a room with some meditating people and see what happens, or see what happens with mood. But I'm in this experiential unknowing phase, and I thought I would just share all of this with you. So that's what I have to say about that. I can't believe I'm sharing this, but I also believe that it is important for us to be transparent about who we really are, and so this is a really important piece of me. I'm not going to talk about it very often unless there's a lot of interest, but this is something that I have experienced, and if you have experienced any weird and wonderful things in your life, any, you know, encounters with the unseen, I would love for you to share it down below. If you have any questions or comments, please share those as well, and I will talk to you all very, very soon. Have a wonderful day, Thanksgiving, and thank you for listening to my gratitude for some experiences I've had. Bye!